thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you asking me, Paul, to MC tonight. It's an honor, not just because of the people who are reading, but because of this place that we're in. The ancestral homeland of the Puyallup people, but also Tacoma. Tacoma to me has personally become, I guess, a place that I'm trying to understand. I lived here for a number of years. I went to college here. And when I was going to college, kind of toward the end of my time there, a teacher said, you should go to a reading. There's this poet who's reading in a church nearby. This was about 20 years ago. So I went and ended up hearing Denise Levertov read a couple years before she passed. And last year, the festival honored the memory of Denise Levertov, and it took me 20 years, I think, to realize what it was I saw that day. And I think that's funny what learning does. It's you know, you interact with some material, with people, with a subject, and there's a way in which that crops back up in your life later on. And I think poems do the exact same thing, where they sort of enter into you in a way and fester or haunt you or stay with you. And in the moment, you know, tonight when you're hearing people read, realize that those poems are going to come back to you later on, especially because of the people we have here tonight. Tacoma is also special to me because of it's where I discovered Richard Rodigan, kind of the same place 20 years ago. I remember going to the Tacoma Book Center and buying this book, Rommel Drives On Deep into Egypt, by Richard Rodigan. And I wanted to read you the inscription that someone wrote to somebody. Stick to your guns, sweetie. Do you have a choice? I hope not. Your pal, Marlon Brando. Miami, 1962. But Marlon is spelled with an I, so I don't know. Our first reader is Philip H. Red Eagle. He's born here in Tacoma and raised in the Northwest. He's a writer, poet, artist, metalsmith, and carver. He's the author of Red Earth, A Vietnam Warrior's Journey, styled in mythical realism, and now in second edition. He's also the originator of Raven Chronicles, which I didn't realize, and which is a publication that I've kind of come in contact and been around in Seattle, which is 26 years old, I think, now. And I can't think of a better person to welcome us tonight. So please give it up for Philip H. Red Eagle.
All right. I'm any Puyallup tribal members in the audience? I'm not a Puyallup tribal member. My grandfather was John Stillicum, and he was a member of the Puyallup tribes, but we had a family dispute going on around 1910 or so, and that kind of messed things up. So I wound up with my father's tribal identity. But I've lived here all my life, and I'm one of the people who helped start the canoe movement, which is fairly successful too. So I have a number of fairly successful projects that have turned out really nice. Paul wanted me to read this. About 16, 17 years ago, I was involved in designing of the light rail station right out front here. And there were two poets, Amelia Holler. And she wrote a poem. And I took that poem and took out the middle of it, which I thought was a connector, and then wrote a poem for the other screen. So there's a screen with her poetry on it, and then mine on the other. And I also followed her style. It's called Reflection. Raindrops of memories flood outside. A green and brown spattered landscape, berry bushes and tall grass along hillsides, patches of river, glint sunlight in spackle blue and gray. Canoes and geese glide to islands, to sky. Rain clouds obscure mountaintops. Red-tailed hawks spiral lazy updrafts. Birds overflow the sky, and the comfort of alder fires warm longhouses along the shore. Salmon gather where fresh water meets the salt, changing from silver to red, transforming for the next generation. Men in canoes thrust bodies forward as spears pierce swirling water. Gliding over cattails and tules, blue jay sings an ancient song, tells 5,000-year-old tales of these new arrivers to Salish. How they came to this Tacoma River place and set their canoes upon this unnamed bay, or was it the other way around? These hills remember that old story better, yet they lie silent, content to say nothing. In this place, these people grew to many clans, came to have many friends and relatives up and down this Salish sea. They learned the way of this water and the mountains and the land. They made new tools and made up their own tales and scoffed at blue jay. Here, Indians fish salmon. Here they meet in potlatch. Their prayers float above Tacoma. Here they chant heart and death. This is a canoe way of life, the way of the cedar and the salmon, and the eagle and the octopus, the mussel and the clam. This is the way of the paddle, of journeys and relations. It is the way of the song and drum, earth and spirit. This river, this Puyallup, wealth of the world, these people, Puyallup, people of the water, keepers of the river, people of cedar and rain, old dreams, old songs, old stories, alive in this old world. I was thinking that I would just read the first poem that I ever wrote. And I'd like to say that I don't consider myself a real poet because my poetry comes from a place that I don't have access to all the time. I'm a veteran, I have PTSD, and so the brain kind of doesn't connect with all of that inner stuff all the time because that's a dangerous place to go. So veterans don't like to go there unless they're triggered. And so a lot of my poems are kind of like trigger poems. They wake me up in the middle of the night, and like this one did, and make me write it down. So I'm not sure that I'm the author of these poems, but at least I'm the messenger. This is the first one I ever wrote, and it was back a while ago, early 90s. Sleepwalk. Santo and Johnny, I said. Who? She said. You know, slow dance, sleepwalk, I swayed. Her eyes looked up, smiled. Her head said no. Here, I'll show you, I said. Grabbed her, pulled her in, bad fit, wrong feel, I thought. No fingers on the back of my neck, no hand draped on my shoulder. Something wrong, I said. Feels nice, she said. No, not it, I said. You know, before Kennedy, before Nam, before King, you know. How old are you, I said. Oh, I said. It's hard to say, you know, I said. She shrugged. You know, before Beatles, before Stones, before hippies, you know. Her eyebrows raised, her head saying no. You know, I said. It was slow like this, I swayed again. Thighs locked together, no two-step, no swing, just move as one. Twirl, stare at the ceiling, feel the feel. You know, before the twist, before the swim, before the monkey, you know. She smiled, tilted head, saying no. You know, taut bellies, hip on hip, breast on chest, hand in the small of back. The feel, you know, before everything went to hell. Her eyes looked up, smiled, her head saying no. Santo and Johnny, you know, sleepwalk. I had an episode back in 2012, and out of it came a lot of these splurges, and I don't know, you may have had that. How many Vietnam vets do we have here? How many Vietnam vets? One. And what's his name over there? So this time I'm going to start and read a few from the back of my book, which I never really get to most of the time. And it's not even a book, it's just one of these. And I decided, because these kind of dripped out of my head when I was having a 6-month-long episode, and you try to regain your sanity, because you're in this place where you've lost a lot of stuff. Your brain is a neuropeptide cascade, they called it, and it evens the brain out. And this all happened because I was putting in for a claim with the VA, and they made me write it all down. And I wrote it all down, and then I was fine. I was nervous and everything, and then a friend said, let's go to a solstice party. So I went to the solstice party, and about 10 p.m., the hostess lit up incense. Boom. It was kind of like a door opened, and I got sucked in. And it lasted a while. But a lot of these are from that time. And I'd be driving along, and they'd come into my head, and I'd pull over, and I'd write them down in my book. And they're not long like these other ones. These are kind of really short. Doubt. I suppose that in time I will not think of you as much. Think of you, your smile. Evolution. It starts out easy and gets worse. Fallen. I feel like I have fallen 1,000 miles and died 1,000 deaths. My mind shattered into 1,000 pieces before touching earth. In passing, I passed through your solar system, passing obliquely, lingering, finding beauty, solace. I bathe in the warmth of your sunlight. You can tell these are about love. That's what comes out sometimes when you have a little break like that. We call them episodes, but they're really kind of psychotic breaks, I guess. And you go to these strange places. Love again. What is this damn love? Does it lie in the shape of a face, a look in one's eye, the rhythm of one's walk? Or is it down in some unreachable place, accessible only when the door to vulnerability opens just a sliver and sends out a message from the room where loneliness lives? Strange things come out. My love howls at the moon. It runs through the fields, bare-ass naked. Break my heart, spare me from this madness. One-liners. The light and the dark of the moon, not two. but one. Sometimes when the words run out, there's nothing left but touch. Option 2. Can we go back to before? Can I put up my guard again? To play like that moment never happened? To go back and hide that nature? To disguise it again? To pretend it again? When hell knocks at your door, suddenly you wish the door were not there, or just to close it forever. I'll finish with this one. Perfect tense. They say that the past is perfect, but it all swings on how perfect was. Past perfect, irrational dreams cloud the now. Past perfect war has scarred the perfect mind. Past imperfect love has wounded the past imperfect heart. Past imperfect fear has weakened the past imperfect soul. These present imperfect lines drawn to the past imperfect have obscured the view to the present imperfect mind. Past imperfect pain has dulled the present imperfect.
Thank you, Philip. I loved how you said, at least I'm the messenger. I feel like that sentiment and the sense of how poetry comes to you and comes to us was beautiful. Philip will be on the Veterans and Poetry of War panel tomorrow at 9 p.m., and I encourage you all to come out for that. 9 a.m. Thank you. Our next poet, I had the pleasure of meeting last month. Some of us went to the Cascadia Poetry Festival being held in Canada. It was in Cumberland. And one thing that I love about these festivals, whether they're held in Nanaimo or Seattle or Tacoma, is that you always discover a poet you'd never heard of, a poet that you are telling other people about. And our next poet, Lucia Misch, is one of those people. She's a poet and performer with more than a decade of writing and performing under her belt. Since getting her start as a champion youth poet in the Bay Area, Lucia has performed on stages across North America, both on her own and in collaboration with other artists. She's a veteran arts educator. She facilitates writing workshops with youth in and out of the classroom as a member of Wordplay, Poetry in Schools, as an Art Starts poet in residence, and a guest teacher at creative arts camps in Canada and the US. And I bought one of her books while I was there, and aside from the cans on the cover of it, you should check it out closer. The title is, "If You Take Away the Bubbles, Your Fancy Italian Soda is Pretty Much Just Tang." And I love that. So please welcome Lucia Misch to the stage.
Thank you. The title of the book is a lesson that I learned heading back from doing some creative arts facilitation stuck in traffic between Delta and Vancouver. All I had in the car with me was a packet of beef jerky, which is very salty, and a 2-day-old open San Pellegrino. And I ate the jerky first, and I think you can probably figure out the rest of the story. I was like, "Don't do it, Lucia. Don't, you shouldn't, don't drink that, don't, oh God." And it was terrible. It was one in a series of questionable choices I have made, but it did at least result in a book title that makes me smile, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Jared, and thank you, Philip, and thank you in advance to all of the poets who are going to read tonight and who are going to be part of the festival. I'm very pleased that I'm going early tonight. I don't have to follow too many of you. That's lovely, and I'm really looking forward to hearing everything that's going to be coming up. I grew up in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas in, I don't know, they call it Northern California. It's really kind of smack dab in the middle, near the Bay Area. But It's the Cascadia Poetry Festival, so we'll call it Northern California. And then both of my parents are from Seattle, so my family is rooted in Western Washington, and I live in Vancouver, BC. And so my Cascadian roots feel like they spread to many places. And as somebody who grew up in the States and moved up to Canada, well, A, I'm not used to having safety announcements before events. I was already nervous, man. Although, unfortunately, I mean, it's also really good practice, unfortunately. But also, when I think about region and when I think about location, I think sometimes in terms of country, and I think sometimes in terms of bioregion, and I think sometimes in terms of culture, and I think sometimes in terms of history. And all of those things, I think, are some of the ingredients of situation, right? Situation. I learned embarrassingly recently that a sitcom is a situation comedy. I had never put that together before in my life. And I think that we need a new genre that is situation dark comedies, specifically when I think about our situation in this region, on this continent, in the world in general. There is a darkness to the comedy of that situation, which is troubling and also can be really very funny, I think. It's that kind of, it sort of induces that kind of laughter. You know when you're driving and you have a really near miss on the highway and you swerve, and then you're okay and you're still going in the lane and everyone bursts out laughing, but it's like, it's that, oh, we just looked total destruction in the face and we're still going kind of comedy. That is the kind that I see popping up in my life the most as a young person in North America right now. And so that was the sort of the beginning thread, the beginning thought that sparked this next poem, which it has its own title, but I like to affectionately call it How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Sitcom. And I hope that you enjoy it. Let's see here. Well, we really cocked that one up, didn't we, friends? We had one teat not to suckle raw, one planet not to fist, one bath not to poop, and we pooped it. Yes, sirree. We really popped the old waterbed, really tipped the big steaming bowl of ramen into the collective lap. We had one limo not to barf, and we barfed it. One cat not to shave, and look who's all skin and hiss and piss on the shoe rack now. And we were so fortunate, the recipients of all this wobbly hardware, all this noble momentum towards why the hell not? We were given so many thought tokens, won so many tickets in the Reason Arcade, and we traded them in for so many things. Bayonets and theremins and brain surgery and trench warfare, industrious revolutions, fetish nights and freighters and church music and touchscreens, so many cool shoes, so many mimeograph machines, myriad flavors of corn nuts and chipper TV characters to cherish, so many oil pours and soccer tournaments and happy fracking accidents and funny taxidermy mustaches and this Beyonce polish on our shining seas and that Jay-Z suit jacket always wrapped around our chilly prom night shoulders like a hug that's richer than God. And we've been happy. Happy as little chinchillas in a Pompeii dust bath. Clean and free as a ball sack at the last bathhouse. But we really Angry Birded that sack of frogs, didn't we? Yeah, we let the Tetris blocks touch the top. Yes, sir, we really dropped our hot dog in the dirt of the old Midway. Really bled on our bridesmaid's dress. We really wiped back to front before the big game this time, didn't we, friends? Yeah, that's right. We are the kind of scrotums who bring pork chops to Piglet's potluck, wings to Big Bird's birthday party, who crash the wrong wake, who bite the corners off all the samosas and then put them back on the platter and are like, hey guys, I brought samosas. The corners are the best part. I fucking hate that guy. But we are that guy, yeah. That guy who puts beef jerky in his breast pocket and goes on a walk to the dog park like nothing's gonna happen. That guy who crashes his Camaro into the river and then swims back to the bar. We really crossed the state line with a minor in the back seat this time, didn't we, friends? Really ran our fist into the wall beside her head when she spoke back. We really carcinomaed that canary, really scraped the sky bloody, really bankrupted the glaciers. We really felled the last redwood, really morphined the forest this time. We really warred those bayonets, really weary, really stabbed those clouds, really angry. And now the empire is falling. And we never even looked up from the Tamagotchi to take in the view from the zenith. We never stopped licking the ledgers long enough to find our own nipples. We barely felt the fulcrum kick out from under us, pinned as we were under this comfortable Humvee, swaddled in flammable blankets, smoking cigars and feeling like ballers. What a Rome. What an old story. What a short sight we were. Thanks. I like the idea that there's lots of kinds of funny in the world, and there's like squirrel photoshopped into a tiny suit of armor funny, and then there's like ultimate and probably inescapable downfall of the species funny, and then maybe the two are not like entirely unrelated. There could be some link there. So I try to bear that in mind. I'm going to read a couple more poems for you. This next piece was inspired by a document that I read a couple years ago on the internet. In 1969, William Safire, who was a speechwriter for President Nixon, wrote a contingency speech. Maybe some of you have seen it. Have any of you seen this speech? It's called An Event of Moon Disaster. It's online, and it's the speech that would have been read to the nation, to the world, if the Apollo 11 astronauts had become stranded on the lunar surface with no hope of rescue. So it's this speech that represents this, sort of fork in the road of possible worlds, where had things gone differently, there would have been human bodies on the face of the moon for the last, more than half century. That speech is what inspired this poem, which shares its name, An Event of Moon Disaster. And I would encourage you to go and find this piece of writing. It's an incredible piece of rhetoric, and was inspirational to me, and maybe could be to you as well. An Event of Moon Disaster. An event of moon disaster. Do not think that the lattices you look through, your screen door view, your inebriate insect eyes, the panes of the calendar, do not think they can be camera obscuras or pinhole vistas through which to safely watch the new eclipse slide by. Do not waste your spit making your lips look wet when there is a rash tide coming anyway. Be unbeholden to the beekeepers in their careful white costumes. They still think your spit is honey and would like to crawl into your comb, curl in one cell of your tiny kaleidoscope, and be an atom in the hive of atoms. An event of moon disaster. Be ready for the Garden of Eden Apple Pickers Union to go on general strike, to see women boosting nude fruit back into the arms of trees. Expect the sun to lift its dress in solidarity and dance the fiasco on the trap doors until your bedfellows in the bomb shelters kiss you awake to listen. Do not think that we have put men in robot bodies without reason, or that perhaps the 11-layer A7L spacesuit is padded casket comfortable. Do not think of dark matters or dismay. Remember that this careful white costume is the smallest Eden we have ever put an atom inside of. Do not think of the hot metal smell of space or the speech laid like a wreath of rocks around the helmets. Do not think of distance. Think instead how the strike was broken and apple juice returned to the shelves, how sure it feels to be stockpiling again. Do not consider a sailor's funeral a commitment to the deep. See how the screen door hinges need oiling, and the wood glue sticks like reason again, and the lipstick tastes like need. Do not think of the panic of a weightless suffocation. Think instead of your children with their heads under their desks, the smell of coffee burning your re-entry into the kitchen, the initials pocket-knifed on the bus window, steady as a footprint in dust. An event of moon disaster. Do not feel weighted by the lead clothes we wear in case the bomb drops. They are not as heavy as they seem. Thank you. It feels so right to have a lectern at which to perform that poem. I appreciate it. Can I take this with me for the future? Cool. Everywhere I'm just like, what's in the grab bag? Is it this giant lectern? Alrighty. So I have one more poem for you. I'm really, really excited to read this, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share it with you. This is a fresh piece, and this is going to be the very first reading of it. And so I hope that you enjoy it, and thank you all very much for listening. This is entitled The American Dollar. Only after September 11th did we find the carnage in our wallets. Someone figured out that if you fold a $20 bill into the shape of a wingless paper airplane, 2 towers show up in the pleat, burning down its center. Bay windows of the White House facade stacked on their side look skyscraping, and foreground trees on either end become bunches of steel smoke. The portrait of Earth our teachers made cascade from above blackboards. It lied to us. Its lines of length and breadth were warped to preserve the perpendicular, tidied so that sailors could chart from port to port without having to look up from the arrow of their compass. To maintain the shape of nations, this map must distort their size. Greenland gets as much ink as all of Africa. If this gives some places an inflated sense of consequence, that is not the mapmaker's concern. His dilemma is how to unfold a round world onto a flat plane. It was a fix, we said, all sarcastic, flattening our money to stroke it creaseless on the polished resin bar top. We could turn it into anything we wanted, another round of greyhounds, globe citrus and juniper in our blood, turning sharp corners to curves, contorting whatever route our tires burnt on the way home. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your festival.
Thank you, Lucia. Your discussion of disaster, I know for a lot of you out there, it's hard not to think about what's happening in California. Cascadia stretches to California. That's sort of the beauty and kind of the pain of the place, is that it goes all over. And some of you who are from here, or from California, who have grown up there, are with us today. And I know it's sort of, we're lucky to have you, but at the same time, I know for a lot of people, it's a hard time to be elsewhere. Our next poet is a 5th-generation Californian of Mexican and Native American Chumash heritage. Lorna D. Cervantes was born in San Francisco and raised in San Jose. She's the author of From the Cables of Genocide, Poems on Love and Hunger, and Emplumada, which won an American Book Award. She's also co-editor of Red Dirt, a cross-cultural poetry journal, and her work has been included in many anthologies, including Unsettling America, an anthology of contemporary multicultural poetry, No More Masks, an anthology of 20th century women poets, and After Aztlan, Latino poets of the 90s. She currently lives in Olympia and spends time as well as in Tenino, and I'm glad to have you here tonight. Welcome, Lorna D. Cervantes.
Should have sent a bio. I'd like to read a brand new poem, kind of long. And it's in 6 sections, and each section has its own title. I don't know how long it is, so I'll just start. This is a poem called Poem for the People. And I want to point out that when the conquerors and conquistadors came to this body of land, Anahuac, the land between 2 great waters, north, south, and central, every single name of Indian people here, native people here, mean the people. The only exception is Uruguay and Paraguay, because they said, who are you? What are you? What do you call yourselves? They said, what do you mean? What do you say? Uruguay? Paraguay? So this is Poem for the People. Harbor Fest in Olympia. They're singing sea shanties on the Virginia V at the precipice of the end of the new age. A gray couple drive a blue tug with a rainbow flag. The old tall ships are there for the fantasy. What's another million to the handful of squelching dancers? The steps and rhythms set the scene, half-forgotten remnants, words of the slaughtered. Hey, 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 The daughters circle dancing the arc of the sun. Rainier melts in the near distance, forgetting its name, Tacoma. The capital reflected in the algae pond wilts in the climate change summer. All is well in Texas, a deep water. Sodden hawks huddle in open taxis. How many still dying? An unasked question. The bayous overflown, the tidy houses drowned, 5 million tons of refinery emissions sting the eyes and lungs like livid, fighting fire ants. This is how it is in a post-nuclear age. When corporations are considered people, the corporations don't consider people. The flooded homes bear their sad legacy of trash and refuse. Day after day, justice lags behind compassion. The water wells as spirit swells, and the hearts and bodies rise. Poem for Thanksgiving. The hearts and bodies rise, as will the stories. Genetically tested, we feed they lion and he. Come, all you people, harvest your crop. There is a rising, just us rising, horizon of dreamers in the waking. There is a vacancy available. Take it now, an opportunity of a life. We are the people all over the land. Ammunition, telepathy, empathy fires its shot. The twin guns of imagination and compassion. Where are they now? Penned away, useless as officers in the mass spree. A union of one bullet for all. Go outside. We are the nature we seek. Delivery. We seek and do it now. The brethren or the bread, the mass breaking without a thread. Yes, we matter. On a corpse or a grave, forgetting to notice the moon and the vortices of grief. I do not know. Plants speak. We know we are each other. One electron moving at the speed of thought. Redemption. Moving at the speed of thought, I come to you, this knowing, this matter delivering. In word, the union rises. Word. We are another mouth in each other, embracing. The dead speak to us in our dreams, endless. The dead speak to us in our dreams, as in the final dreaming, endless as a Mormon's legacy, a heaven for all, heavy with lead. We led the people from the fire because we could, because a little bird, and I told you so. The spiral intersects, a double healing, a genesis of the self and the glacier flow. Poem for the harvest. Of the self and the glacier flow into rivers of destruction and the eve of resurrection, on the eve of reconstruction, the ever or the never, after the will is gone. We are never getting over. We are never going away. The names of the doomed go on forever, sodden seeds in the masonry as something given or someone gives into the black hole of remembering, a kind of dream, kindness in its greatest giving, and give back. Plant the seeds. Everything intends to grow. We must water. You have to sow your seed if you want to grow. For the water of us all. If you want to grow, remember water. Remember the water bears doused with ice at night or parching in the desert crossing. Remember the water you crossed. It will remember you. Give love and thanks to water, absorbing our sorrows as it does, and so it shall in the end. Remember the children, 3 generations backwards and forward. Remember the rocking and the rocks. Remember us, verboten of voice. I say it now. A little bird told me, a golden hovering hummingbird, bonded from the brown and the purple-hearted, an impossible fuse, but nonetheless. And And I want to read an older poem that I wrote right after 9/11, about the day after. There was immediately a call to all the poets everywhere in the world to write a one-line poem to America. And I usually do this with jazz, but I guess we don't have any. Huh? No one has a saxophone. You'll have to hear it. Something Mingusy. And so this I wrote right after 9/11, and I rewrote it just the other day after the mass shooting in Las Vegas, and I reordered it. It's the only thing I changed. 10 one-line poems to America. America, you suckle on the scars of war. America, you dream into the foxhole of a wounded heart. America, don't build me a country to mourn. America, you are the path cut throughout. America, death is a global village. America, grief is a many splintered thing. America, too much freedom is just enough. America, you are the poem waiting to happen. America, peace is a many tender thing. America, we are the song waiting to be sung. And I think I'll just end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love this, remember the water you crossed, it will remember you. Thank you for that line. So good. Our next poet is Bruce Weigl, who teaches at Lorain County Community College. Weigl is also a Vietnam veteran. He enlisted in the U.S. Army shortly after his 18th birthday and spent 3 years in the service. He served in the Vietnam War from December 1967 to December 1968 and received the Bronze Star. He's the author of many books of poetry, and in his memoir, The Circle of Han, Weigl writes, "The war took away my life and gave me poetry. In return, the fate the world has given me is to struggle to write powerfully enough to draw others into the horror." In addition to writing his own poetry, Weigl worked with Tan Thi Nguyen of the Joyner Research Center to translate poems of North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers captured during the war. Weigl and Nguyen accepted an invitation from the Vietnamese Writers Association and traveled to Hanoi to receive assistance in translating the poems. Along with Philip, Bruce will be on the panel tomorrow at 9 a.m., and I really encourage you to be there. I think it's going to be an amazing panel, and I really look forward to hearing what he has to say tonight. Please welcome Bruce Weigl.
Thank you all for having me. I'm not quite sure why I'm here. From Ohio, but for poetry, you know, we'll travel anywhere. I wanted to read some. I once asked my Yugoslav grandmother if there was anything good about getting old, and she stroked her beard and she said no, nothing. But she wasn't a writer. So she couldn't say that she was going to read a poem that she wrote 40 years ago called Song of Napalm. After the storm, after the rain stopped pounding, we stood in the doorway watching horses walk off lazily across the pasture's hill. We stared through the black screen, our vision altered by the distance, so I thought I saw a mist kicked up around their hooves when they faded like cutout horses away from us. The grass was never more blue in that light, more scarlet. Beyond the pasture, trees scraped their voices into the wind. Branches crisscrossed the sky like barbed wire, but you said they were only branches. Okay. The storm stopped pounding. I'm trying to say this straight. For once, I was sane enough to pause and breathe outside my wild plans, and after the hard rain, I turned my back on the old curses. I believed they swung finally away from me. But still the branches are wire, and thunder is the pounding mortar. Still I close my eyes and see the girl running from her village, napalm stuck to her dress like jelly, her hands reaching for the no one who waits in waves of heat before her. So I can keep on living, so I can stay here beside you. I try to imagine she runs down the road and wings beat inside her until she rises above the stinking jungle and her pain eases and your pain, mine. But the lie swings back again. The lie works only as long as it takes to speak, and the girl runs only as far as the napalm allows until her burning tendons and crackling muscles draw her up into that final position burning bodies so perfectly assume. Nothing can change that. She is burned behind my eyes, and not your good love, and not the rain-swept air, and not the jungle green pasture unfolding before us can deny it. So I wanted to read a few poems from this book called Song of Napalm, which I published in 1988, just because I know that some of you have been watching the Ken Burns version. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of mine. My version. I don't know. Have you all been watching it? Yeah. You know, it's. I love the interviews. I think the interviews are amazing with both sides. Oh, can you hear me? How's that? But there's a huge gap in that story as it's presented to Americans on television. And this is a small matter of something called the Phoenix Program. Yes? Did I break it? How's that? Sorry. The Phoenix Program. Without talking about the Phoenix Program, you can't talk about the American war in Vietnam because it was at the heart of the war. And I think the reason that Mr. Burns and his colleagues didn't include much discussion about the Phoenix Program is because it's CIA stuff, and it was probably impossible for them to get the kind of access to that they got with the rest of the stuff from the Military Assistance Command in Vietnam. It's a really ugly version of the war that most Americans don't know, and it's disappointing to me that it wasn't part of the film. This is one of those books where the poems move around inside when you close it, so they're hard to find. When you were a field soldier in the war, one of the things that you did when you came back from the field was a duty called burning shit. We were the most sophisticated, powerful army in the history of the world, but they forgot about that. They didn't know what to do with it. So we did what the Army always does with things that they don't want. We burned it. And this is a poem called Burning Shit at Ankh for my fellow veterans. into that pit. I had to climb down with a rake and matches. Eventually, you had to do something because it just kept piling up, and it wasn't our country. It wasn't our air thick with the sick smoke. So another soldier and I lifted the shelter off its blocks to expose the homemade toilets, 55-gallon drums cut in half with crude wood seats that splintered. We soaked the piles in fuel oil and lit the stuff and tried to keep the fire burning. To take my first turn, I paid some kid a care package of booze from home. I'd walked past the burning once and gagged the whole heart of myself. It smelled like the world was on fire. But when my turn came again, there was no one, so I stuffed cotton up my nose and marched up that hill. We poured and poured until it burned and black smoke curdled, but the fire went out. Heavy artillery hammered the evening away in the distance. Vietnamese laundry women watched from a safe place, laughing. I'd grunted out 8 months of jungle and thought I had a grip on things, but we flipped the coin and I lost and climbed down into my fellow soldiers' shit and began to sink and didn't stop until I was deep to my knees. Lift ships cut the air above me. The hacking blast of their blades ripped dust in swirls. So every time I tried to light a match, it died, and it all came down on me then. The stink and the heat and the worthlessness until I slipped and climbed out of that hole and ran past the olive drab tents and trucks and clothing and everything green as far from the shit as the fading light allowed. Only now I can't fly. I lay down in it and fingerprint the words of who I am across my chest until I'm covered and there's only one smell, one word. Pardon? Was it? Burning shit or me burning shit? Both. I want to read one more poem from this book. The last poem in the collection is called The Kiss. All the goodbyes said and done, I climbed into the plane and sat down. From the cold I was shaking and ached to be away from the love of those waving through the frozen window. Once as a boy I was lost in the storm, funnel cloud twisting so near I was pitched from my bicycle into the ditch, picked up by the wind in yellow sky, my arms before me, feeling my way through the wind I could not cry above. Out of that black air of debris, out of nowhere, my father bent down, lifted me, and ran to the house of strangers. And again, that day on the plane, he appeared to me, my forgotten orders in his hands. He bent down to put the envelope into my lap. On my lips, he kissed me hard, and without a word, he was gone into the cold, through the jungle, through the highlands, through all that green dying. I touched my fingers to my lips. Thank you. The last book I published is called The Abundance of Nothing. And it's the nothing of the Dharma, that nothing, in case you were wondering. This is a book I wrote when I first started having the sense of making that last turn in your life that you make at a certain age. I'm 68, and it just feels like, I am. I'm getting closer to the front of the line. And I wanted to write about that. That's the great thing about being a poet is that any horrible thing that you're confronted with in your life, it's fodder for our work. So I spent a lot of time in Hanoi. I've been going there since 1986, and I translate from the Vietnamese, translate Vietnamese poetry, and I work with Vietnamese writers. And some of these poems come from my time in Hanoi, as this one does. It's called Quiet Fountain. And it's a sonnet without rhymes. I love the guest house on Nguyen Zu. I slept inside the linen net, my windows open wide to let the spirits in who come to visit from the lake. I've seen them in a chorus. They're white shapes in the garden where the lotus blossom has to be content to swirl in just one place. The fish pond crowded, the quiet fountain only barely there. I share my room with geckos on the wall who chirp their discontent, the lack of bugs, my modern pesticides, and with a rat who visits when I shower. He cleans himself beside me on the floor, and soon I wash like him, beyond the gaze that knows there's room for both of us to live. So when I found that rat, I finished my shower and went down, and I was staying at a guest house, and there was a manager at the desk, and I said, there's a rat in my room. And he said, he won't eat much. So I've completely lost track of time, so I have time for a few more. Yes? One more? One more? Like a really long one or a short one? No, I'm kidding. I'll read the last poem in this book also. It's called Meditation After Prayer. Thank you all very much for having me, and thanks for coming this evening. I appreciate it. It's only rain and sleet and freezing sheen over everything that makes it all look real. The dying time so things can be born again. Someone scratched some marks into the walls of a cave as if to say something, as if to show the way into a world that didn't exist yet but could be heard like a great army trudging across the hills from far away. I am far away sometimes, although not entirely by choice. What happens after prayer is a question in the form of heat that tingles my spine just to the edge of pain where I like it. I can't say it any other way. Thank you.
I find myself wanting more of all of these poets, and to that I would say talk to them after the reading, get to know them, but also get to know their work. Thankfully, the university bookstore is here just outside in the lobby, and I'll be encouraging you to stop by their table, and they have many books from most of the readers tonight and tomorrow, so I really appreciate them being here. Our next author is also from the Midwest, and being from the Midwest, I'm glad to have two Midwesterners here in some ways. Bruce from Ohio, Patricia originally from Chicago, and I think Paul's behind some of this. Paul's a Midwestern I met when I first kind of came to Seattle. I grew up outside of Chicago, lived in Iowa and other places. Matt Treese is somebody else I know who's lived in Ohio, and it's interesting how we sort of find ourselves here. And I know I was looking for a new place as I came to the Northwest, to Cascadia. But Patricia Smith is the author of 6 critically acknowledged volumes of poetry, including Should Have Been Jimmy Savannah, which was awarded the Bobbitt National Prize for Poetry from the Library of Congress. She's done so much. I feel like the amount of poetry that she's written as a journalist, as someone who's edited anthologies of fiction. She's a teacher. She taught today, worked with students here, and she's just sort of given so much to poetry as a performer, as a writer, as a teacher, as a mentor. I feel like we are so lucky to have her here. And one thing I would say to you, Patricia, is you're not alone. I found out there are 28 Patricia Smiths in Tacoma. So you are in good company. And she's a Cave Canem faculty member. She's a professor of English at College of Staten Island and a faculty member of the Sierra Nevada MFA program. I just want to give you the stage, and I can't wait to hear you tonight. So thank you for being here.
everybody doing, all right? All right, I'm very, very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And also, I've really enjoyed listening to such a stellar lineup of poets and discovering a new voice and reacquainting myself with people I haven't seen or heard in a while. I was running out and back because I kept changing my mind about what I was going to read. And I thought, I don't have to. Hi, how's that? That's better? Okay. So I decided to read a couple of poems from Blood Dazzler, which was a book of poems about Hurricane Katrina. And I'm doing this because Puerto Rico is so much in the news. The first poem is written in Katrina's voice, which happens throughout this book, and it's when Katrina first becomes a Category 5 storm. 8 a.m. Sunday, August 28, 2005. For days I've been offered blunt slivers of larger promises. Even flesh, my sweet recurring dream, has been tantalizingly dangled before me. I have crammed my mouth with buildings, brushed aside skimpy altars, snapped shut windows to bright shadow with my fingers, and I've warned them, soft, you must not know my name. Could there be other weather, other divas stalking the cringing country with insistent eye? Could there be other rain laced with the slick flick of electric and my own pissed boom? Or could this be it? Finally, my praise day. All my fists at once. Now officially a bitch, I'm confounded by words. All I've ever been is starving, fluid, and noise. So I huff a huge sulk, thrust out my chest, open wide my solo swallowing eye. You must not know. Scarlet glare fixed on the trembling crescent. I fly. Thank you. We talked a little bit this morning about persona, and the poem that started the book, I didn't intend to write a book about Katrina, but it was the story of the 34 nursing home residents who died once the administrators thought someone was coming to get them, and they left them there. And what I wanted to try to do, since there was so much tragedy piled on top of tragedy during Katrina, was see if we could dial the clock back a little and give the 34 people a little bit of their voice back. So this is in 34 little tiny parts. It's not long though. St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana, September 7th. 34 bodies were found drowned in a nursing home where people did not evacuate. More than half the residents of St. Rita's Nursing Home, 20 miles southeast from downtown New Orleans, died August 29th when floodwaters from Hurricane Katrina reached the home's roof. 1. I believe Jesus is hugely who he says he is. The crook of an arm, a shadow threatening my hair, the hellish glare beneath the moon wash, the slapping storm that wakes me, the washing clean. 2. The reaper has touched his lips to my days, blessing me with gray fragrance and awkward new skin. What makes the dust of me smell like a dashed miracle, the underside of everything, what requires me to hear the bones. 3. Before the rain stung like silver, I had forgotten me. My name was a rude visitor, arriving unannounced, always without a gift, and then leaving too soon. 4. If you knew my alley, it's stinking blue. If you knew dirt-gritted collard greens that are salt pork slick and doused with Tabasco, then you knew me. I know that you've come with my engine and the rest of my skin. You will rise me. 5. Sun don't rise. My daughter don't know enough to dial a phone. Gets hard to remember how my womb folded because of them, how all of me lumbered with their foolish weight. You see what they done? How hard and sweet they dropped me here. 6. Clumps of earth in the rising, and me too weathered to birth a howl. I sleep in small shadows. I climb the bitten left wall of my heart. In all the places I fall, it is dry. 7. We knew we had been bred for sacrifice. Our overflow of yesterday's too wretched a nudge, our tired hearts borderless and already mapped for the motherland. We reach for the past like it is food and we are starving. Our surfaces are scoured. We are prepared. We are wrapped in white. 8. When help comes, it'll be young men smelling like cigarettes and Chevys. Muscled boys with autumn breath and steel baskets, just the right size for our souls. To save us, they will rub our gums with hard bread. They will offer us water. 9. To cool the fever, you rub the sickness with some wet earth. For swelling, you boil a just plucked chicken and then you douse the hurt in the steam. Always from the position of your knees, you create the savior that you need. And then you wait. Wait. Jesus. Both faith and magic done failed. 10. There is no light, no thin food moving through my arms. Even without machines, I feel my numbers have soared. I am a sudden second of soft leaving. I'm cold, and I'm strapped to this country. 11. Daughter, son, I am bursting with this. I am straining to celebrate the links of blood. I am wide aloud, craving something shaped like you. 12. There are no bridges. 13. We are stunned on our scabbed backs. There is the sound of whispered splashing, and then this. Leave them. 14. Our Father. 15. The walls are slithering with spit, tears, and the badness that muddies rivers. We flail in that sin, alive and bended beneath a wretched southern rain. We sip our breath from that filthy ocean. Only some things float. 16. I ain't scared of no wet, no wave. I done seen more than this. God is in all houses. Just balance the huge noun of him on your tongue. 17. Wait with me. Watch me sleep in this room that looks so much like night. I'm gonna wake up, I swear it, to some kind of sun. 18. My name is Erlene, and I'm gonna save you my life. Sugar in my veins, a single cloudy eye, and blood when I pee. Half dead. That's what I used to tell them. Hell, I'm already half dead. 20. I've forgotten how to pray. I can't find my knees. I want the man with my needles. I want that sting, those silver holes in my body. I want my needles. I want to sleep for days. I want somebody's hand. 21. Hallowed be thy name. 22. Hallowed be our names. Call us running boards, the Iceman, Big Band, Hogshead, Possum and Stewing Pots. Twist our heads on snapping necks back to where we danced from. Call us names that are barely necessary. Call us those who do not need these days. 23. Big Easy. I ran your green, rolled in your red dust, and your sun turned the white of me red and the black of me blue. Funny how colored I got, how I absorbed your heat, and how you, without flinching, called me your child. 24. God, we just need your glitter. You know those miracles you do? You know the ones you do for no reason at all? 25. I fight the rise with all the guitar left in my throat. Old folks got shit to say, ain't got but a little time to say it. We don't never die quiet. 26. A sudden ocean of everyone's shoulders. 27. And this scripture, leave them. 28. And I am left, no deity hovering, no black hair on my head, all of me thinner than when I began. Fingers of ice climb me, reach my dimming light, and then choke my only angel. 29. I had the rumble hips, I tell you. I would sling back and press curl and big titties with necessary milk. I was somebody's woman. I was the city where the city wasn't. Louisiana, goddamn, you lied to me so lush. 30. I lost my sin in that war, but I ain't gonna need no eyes for this resurrection. That's gonna be one hell of a line. I'll be the one slightly off center. I might be facing the wrong way. 31. They left us, me, him, our crinkled hands. They left our hard histories, our gone children and story tells. They left the porch creaking. They left us to our God, but our God was mesmerized elsewhere, watching his reign. 32. Thy will be. 33. No more of us, stunned and silent on the skin of this sea, this thunderous wet. We bob and bounce and spin slow, draped in an odd sparkle. 34. The under-earth turns its face to us. Leave them. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, one more. Okay, the odd one. So I watch a lot of bad television and cartoons. And I have to do something to pull myself out of that poem. So we were talking about persona poems earlier today. And I've always been fascinated with Popeye and olive oil. Okay, because I used to watch that and I couldn't piece it together. I was like, who are they? How are they related? Are you, I think you are back there? Do I know you? No? Okay, obviously not, because she's going, leave me alone. No, you, like you, not you, next to you. She looks, yeah, you. Yeah, not you, back, far, yeah, her, yeah, you, I don't know you. Wow, I'm sorry, I almost interrupted the reading to say hello to you, and you weren't even the person I thought. Well, okay, never mind. Anyway, it's like olive oil, and so I was like, who's who here? So I was particularly fascinated with olive oil because it's like, why are you on the docks? Where are your people, you know? And not only that, it's like, and whose baby was Sweet Pea? Right? Does Sweet Pea have, that wasn't Olive Oil's, but this, yeah, Sweet Pea was just, hey, and no, nobody was taking care. So I decided I wanted to write about olive oil, and I came up with this title. It was like Olive Oil Talks to People magazine. So I thought this is going to be funny because, it's like Bluto, Bluto. She can't make up her mind. It's like, and they're both like all abusive and weird, So I wanted to do this funny poem, and of course, like Bruce said, you can't tell a poet anything, right? So instead, it just came out all dark and weird. So this will be the last one. Olive Oil Talks to People magazine. If you must know me, first know this. I was born a bone child, a bleached confusion of sticks clattering from my mother's womb, ribs fused gently around a sputtering heart. No milk moved in the woman who made me, so I lay in her thin arms, sucking the thought of the sea from her skin. My father was a stevedore, wrist of dust, his skinny pink neck bulging with pull and push, heft and release. My mother grew weak trying to love him, searching for the rhythms of water in the way his sour body folded around sleep, his demands for sex, more potatoes. She sat at the window, watching real sailors. He blossomed as her body cramped with me. He was praying for a boy, muscles he could tame, a fool who'd believe he was seaworthy. But then I came, blanched, sickly, slick with blood and effort, hair as flat and black as a seal's. He never held me and only touched me once, his fingers tangling, then pulling away, startled, disgusted, thrilled. Perhaps he hoped I could be a man, but he went no further because he only called himself a sailor. Early one morning as he helped a crew unload the windswept, his heart splintered and burst, his body falling only inches from the sea he'd sworn to possess before he died. His mouth filled with earth and chips of wood. My mother screamed, refused food, and followed. I was left alone in the house of my birth, a battered wooden shell ravaged by wind and salt. My wide eyes were trained on the waterline, watching the rickety ships bob and pivot, hearing the raw shouts, the thick voices of mariners. I was still a stick interrupted by knees, ending in huge feet caged in black shoes. I pulled my hair tight and looped a red ribbon through the floppy bun, powdered coy circles on pale cheeks. I stuffed napkins into the front of my dress and pranced the shore, a sacrifice of toothpicks. I wanted the man my father had wanted to be, a man of the sea, drunk with horizons. The rumbling one came first. We're about to talk about Bluto now. Everybody okay so far? Isn't this weird, though? You're like, I'll never watch cartoons again. Okay. All sinew and teeth, his arms were tree trunks, muscles screaming inside stiff cotton clothing. His real name didn't matter. The men I can never get past this part without laughing. The men barked, Bluto! And the hard syllables swirled in my head. A look from him would have curled my father, made my mother rise and press her face against the window. The helpless air crackled when he was in it, sparks stinging my skin, currents bristling my hair. Love made me dance around him, silly with want, my hard black brogans clicking on the dock. My wretched waltz amused, then confused him until he could not imagine the night without me, ribs tightened around my sputtering heart. I'm going too long, right? This is the last poem, but it's longer than I thought. Okay, cut me if, okay. No music or tentative fingers. He took me like a windstorm, left me rattled and sore. His brash laughter boomed, and a crowd gathered at my window to watch him suck tiny red stars into the skin of my throat. He took me propped against the wall, pinned to the rough wooden floor, in the chipped porcelain bathtub, against the icebox, from the front, from behind, with his mouth and with his cock veined as a horse's neck. I wept with love and bled into his cupped hand. When he left, I went with him, thinner than when I began, but wanting the sea and that man more than anything. He passed me to his drooling men, roped me to the bow, laughed at my longing. On faraway islands bursting with color I could smell, he starved me, tied me to tree trunks, teased my body with tigers. Each night he rewarded my devotion, biting into my skin with yellow teeth, another letter of his name carved into my skinny soul. Soon he would love me more than water. But one raucous midnight, while I prayed no train would come rumbling down the tracks I was tied to, the ropes loosened and I was swept up by arms I didn't know. I looked up into a comical squint of eyes, smelled the briny musk of his panting, and wondered what seas this man had seen. If Bluto was tidal wave, Popeye was ripple. Bald, nearly blind, bubble-cheeked, a rotting pipe teetering on his bottom lip, my savior. As if I had asked to be saved. I hated him, his giddy, toothless smile, that stupid giggle, his bulging, cartoon forearms. When he saw my scars, he blubbered like a baby, weeping at my histories of torn skin and not recognizing the signpost of love. I fell asleep, counting, while his mouth touched each one. I had no place for him in my crazy life, yet there he was. When he loved me, laying me down as if I were a rose, my wounds found new skin. I was too beautiful to be me. I'm almost finished. But now my life borders on slapstick. I walk into traps, tumble into rushing rivers, one-eyed ogres dangle me over spitting volcanoes. Bluto snatches me from Popeye's bed, slams his want into me, threatens me with blades. Popeye gobbles what he can of the earth and risks his life to find me. Beats Bluto senseless, then it all begins again. My body stretches between them, thinner than ever. Popeye wants to marry me, make an honest woman out of a hot, bony stevedore's daughter. Bluto lights a match, holds it to my nipple. You ask how I can love them both, how these bones have carried them for so long. If you must know, first know this. I was raised by the water, crafted by tides, a stick child, never wise or beautiful. Whatever I loved, loved the water first. And I will die possessing these sailing men who fight over my frail body, craving my flesh, but neglecting the sea. Thank you very much. That was weird, wasn't it? Thank you.